The slap sounded louder than the wind howling through the Grand Canyon. I thought I was helpless against my stepmother until a voice from the next tent pierced the dark. A stranger whispered that she had recorded every second and asked if I wanted the police or the rangers. That single video pulled a thread that unraveled 20 years of lies, forged signatures, and a secret bank account my mother left me. The physical pain was just the beginning. My name is Quinn Mercer, and I am 29 years old. Yet sitting there in the pitch black of a nylon tent, I felt like a terrified child of 5. My cheek throbbed with a pulse that matched the frantic beating of my heart. It was not just the sting of the slap. It was the heat radiating from the skin, a physical brand of shame that burned hotter than the Arizona sun had all day. I hugged my knees to my chest, trying to make myself small, trying to disappear into the sleeping bag, as if the synthetic fabric could shield me from the reality of what had just happened outside. The air in the Grand Canyon drops rapidly after sunset, turning brittle and cold, but I was sweating. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to clasp them together between my knees to stop them from vibrating against the tent floor. I closed my eyes, but the darkness behind my eyelids offered no relief. It only served as a projection screen for the memory that was less than 15 minutes old. It played on a loop in my mind, vivid and nauseating. Marla had found me near the water station. It was supposed to be a simple trip to refill our canteens for the hike tomorrow, but nothing was ever simple with Marla. She had gripped my upper arm with fingers that felt like steel talons, dragging me behind the large sandstone formation near the communal bathrooms. The sheer grandeur of the canyon, the millions of years of geological history surrounding us, was just a backdrop for her pettiness. "You ungrateful little leech," she had hissed, the spit flying from her lips and landing on my chin. "We bring you on this trip. We pay for your food, and you have the audacity to look at me like that?" I had not looked at her in any specific way. I never did. I had learned a decade ago that making eye contact with Marla was an invitation for war, and looking away was an admission of guilt. I had simply existed in her space, and that was offense enough. "I didn't say anything, Marla," I had stammered, trying to pull my arm free. "That is the problem, Quinn. You never say anything. You just sulk. You mope around like we owe you something." Her voice had risen, cracking with a hysteria she usually kept well hidden behind her suburban housewife smile. "You are 29 years old. Why are you even here? Why don't you have your own life?" Then came the strike. It was not a shove. It was a calculated, open-handed slap that connected with the side of my face with a wet, sharp crack that echoed off the rock face. The force of it had snapped my head to the side, my teeth cutting into the inside of my cheek. The shock was absolute. She had been verbally venomous for years, slippery and cruel with her words, but she had never touched me, not like this. I had stumbled back, my hand flying to my face, and that was when I saw him. Ray, my father. He was standing 10 feet away, emerging from the path that led back to the campsite. He saw his wife strike his daughter. He saw my head snap back. He saw the tears instantly spring to my eyes from the shock of pain. And what did he do? He did not rush forward. He did not yell. He did not shield me. He just looked tired. He looked at me with the same weary resignation he used when the car broke down or when it rained on a barbecue day. "Keep it down, Marla," he muttered, his eyes sliding off me like I was a stain on the landscape that ruined the view. "Don't make a scene in front of all these people." Then he turned his back. He turned his back and walked toward the fire pit, leaving me alone with the woman who had just assaulted me. That turn, that pivoting of his heel in the red dust, hurt worse than Marla's hand ever could. It was a confirmation of what I had suspected since I was 12. I was not his daughter. I was just collateral damage in his marriage. Now, inside the tent, I held my breath. The silence of the campsite was heavy, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the low murmur of conversations from other campers down the ridge. My half-sister, Brooke, was in the smaller pup tent next to mine. She was 18, the golden child, currently sleeping the deep, untroubled sleep of someone who had never been looked at like a burden. I had to be quiet. If I cried, she might hear. If she heard, she would wake up and ask questions. And if Brooke asked questions, Marla would spin it. Marla always spun it. Quinn is being dramatic again. Quinn is having one of her episodes. Quinn is trying to ruin our vacation. I bit my knuckle to stifle a sob. The injustice of it sat in my chest like a block of concrete. I was trapped here, miles from civilization, dependent on their car, their schedule, and their money to get back to the city. I was completely alone. Or so I thought. A sound broke my spiral. It was the distinct, sharp noise of a zipper. Zip. It came from the tent directly to my left, separated from mine by only a few feet of gravel and scrub brush. I froze. I wiped my eyes frantically, terrified that Marla had come back to finish what she started. But the footsteps that crunched on the gravel were not Marla's angry stomps. They were slow, deliberate. A shadow fell over the side of my tent, blocking out the sliver of moonlight. I heard everything. The voice was low, female, and steady. It was not whispering, exactly, but it was pitched just for me. It carried a weight that cut through the thin nylon wall between us. "She hit you, didn't she?" I stopped breathing. My lungs seized. The gaslighting reflex kicked in instantly. A defense mechanism honed over 15 years of living with Marla. No, she didn't. I fell. It was a game. I provoked her. But the throbbing in my cheek screamed the truth. I did not answer. I was too scared to speak. "I am not going to hurt you," the voice said. Closer this time, right against the mesh window of my tent. "But I need you to know that you are not crazy. I saw it." Trembling, I reached out and slowly unzipped the bottom of the window. I peered out into the darkness. A woman was sitting on a folding camp chair right outside her tent. She was turned away from the firelight, facing me. She looked to be in her 30s, wearing a thick fleece jacket and a beanie pulled low over her ears. She held a smartphone in her hand, the screen glowing softly against her face. "My name is Naomi," she said. She did not smile. Her face was serious, her eyes dark and intense. "I am a solo traveler. I tend to notice things, especially when people try to hide them behind big rocks." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "You saw?" "I saw," Naomi confirmed. "And I heard, ungrateful leech. That is what she called you, right?" I flinched. Hearing a stranger repeat those words made them sound even uglier. "It doesn't matter," I whispered, moving to zip the window back up. "It's just family stuff. We are under a lot of stress." "Stop," Naomi said. It was a command, not a request. She turned her phone screen toward me. The brightness was turned down low, but the image was crisp. Even in the dim light of the camping lanterns, the video was damning. There was Marla. Her face twisted in a rage that looked demonic in the shadows. The camera shook slightly, but the audio was crystal clear. The insults, the sound of the slap, a sickening thwack that made me nauseous to hear again. And then, the camera panned slightly to the left. Ray, standing there, watching, and then walking away. "I recorded everything," Naomi said, her voice devoid of pity but full of a cold, sharp anger. "From the moment she started dragging you, do you want me to call the Rangers? Or the cops first?" I stared at the screen, paralyzed, for years. Marla had told me I was too sensitive. Ray had told me I imagined the malice, that I misinterpreted their intentions. It is just tough love. "Quinn, you take things the wrong way." But here it was, on a glowing rectangle. Objective truth. A stranger saw it and called it what it was. "She says you exaggerate," Naomi said, reading my silence as I stared at the phone. "That is what people like her do. They make you doubt your own eyes. But cameras do not lie, and I do not lie." You recorded it?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "I did. I was filming the sunset when I heard the yelling. I just kept rolling." She pulled the phone back and looked me dead in the eye. "Now, I have a question for you. Quinn, She knew my name. Of course she did. Marla had screamed it loud enough for the echoes to reach the bottom of the canyon. "Do you want me to delete this?" Naomi asked. "Do you want me to pretend it never happened? Or do you want me to keep it? Because to me, what is on this phone looks less like a family argument and more like a crime. It looks like assault." My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at the tent where Brooke was sleeping. I looked at the larger tent where Ray and Marla were likely lying next to each other, perhaps justifying their actions, perhaps sleeping soundly while I sat here bleeding inside. If this video vanished, tomorrow would be just another day where I put on extra concealer to hide the bruise. I would apologize for existing. I would eat my granola bar in silence and pretend that my father loved me. But if it stayed, it was proof. It was leverage. It was the one thing I had never possessed in this family. A weapon. A strange sensation washed over me. It was a mix of terrifying shame and a sudden, sharp relief. I was not crazy. I was not lying. I was a victim. Yes, but for the first time, I was a victim with a witness. I took a deep breath, the cold desert air filling my lungs. "Please," I whispered, the word barely escaping my lips. "Please, do not delete it." Naomi nodded once, a sharp, decisive movement. She tapped the screen, saving the file. The light from the phone cast shadows across her determined face. "Good," she said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming colder than the desert night surrounding us. "Because I also recorded what your stepmother said right after you ran off. She thought you were out of earshot. But my phone picks up audio very well. She said something about that account and how you never need to know." The morning sun over the Grand Canyon was aggressive. It did not gently wake the world. It pried my eyelids open and flooded the tent with a relentless, exposing light. I sat up and immediately regretted the movement. My head throbbed in rhythm with the pulse in my cheek. I reached for my compact mirror, dreading what I would find. The mark was there. It was a blooming violet shadow along my jawline, hidden partially by the curve of my chin, but undeniable if anyone looked closely. I spent the next 20 minutes applying thick layers of concealer, dabbing the beige cream over the evidence of Marla's rage until my skin looked waxy and artificial. I had become an expert at painting over cracks in the foundation, though usually, those cracks were emotional, not physical. When I finally unzipped the tent and stepped out into the crisp morning air, Marla was already holding court. She stood by the portable gas stove, flipping pancakes with a theatrical flair. She wore a pristine white windbreaker that somehow remained spotless, despite the red dust that coated everything else. To the group of German tourists at the next campsite, she looked like the perfect American matriarch, capable, cheerful, and generous. "There she is," Marla chirped as I approached, her voice pitching up into that fake, saccharine register she reserved for public performances. "Sleepyhead, we were about to eat without you. Grab a plate. Quinn?" She smiled. It was a dazzling but practiced smile that did not reach her eyes. Her eyes were hard, flat stones that dared me to speak. "Go ahead," that look said. "Tell them. Make a scene. See who they believe." I took a paper plate silently. Ray was sitting on a folding stool, nursing a mug of coffee. He looked at the ground, then at the fire, then at the distant rim of the canyon. He looked everywhere except at me. This was the dynamic Ray had chosen. After my mother died of cancer when I was 12, Ray had not looked for a partner who would love his grieving daughter. He had looked for a manager. He wanted someone to restore order to a house that had been shattered by illness and death. Marla had swept in with her color-coded calendars and her strict rules about shoes in the hallway, selling him a vision of stability. She promised him that if he just let her handle the details, the pain would go away. The price of that stability was me. I ate my pancakes, which tasted like sawdust, and watched Brooke emerge from her tent. My half-sister looked fresh and rested, her hair tied back in a messy bun that managed to look stylish. "Morning," Brooke yawned, stretching. She hugged Ray, then Marla. She did not hug me, but she offered a sleepy wave. "Are we hiking the rim trail today?" "We sure are," Ray said, finding his voice now that he was addressing the daughter who did not complicate his life. "It is a beautiful day for it." As we packed up the camp, the old narrative began to play in my head. The one Marla had scripted and Ray had directed. I was the problem child. I was the one who left, when I chose a college 3 states away. Marla had sighed dramatically at Sunday dinners, telling anyone who would listen that I had abandoned them. She painted my desire for education as a rejection of the family unit. Meanwhile, Brooke, who was attending a local community college and living at home, was the saint. She was the one who cared. I hoisted my backpack, feeling the straps dig into my shoulders. It was heavy, but the weight of my memories was heavier. I remembered the birthday gifts that never arrived. When I turned 21, I had waited by my mailbox in my drafty apartment for a week. When I finally called home, Marla had sounded perplexed. "Oh, we mailed that package weeks ago," she had said, her voice smooth. "The postal service is just terrible these days. I suppose it is lost. What a shame." It happened with bank statements, too. It happened with letters from distant relatives. Anything that could give me a connection to the world outside Marla's control had a habit of disappearing in transit. And then there was the money. "We are just so tight right now," Ray would tell me over the phone, his voice dropping to a whisper so Marla wouldn't hear, even though I knew she was listening on the extension. "The house repairs, Brooke's tuition, you know how it is. Quinn, we are proud of you for being so independent." So I worked 2 jobs. I waited tables at a diner until 2 in the morning and shelved books at the library on weekends. I ate instant noodles and convinced myself that my struggle was noble, that my father was doing his best against a cruel economy. I never questioned why they drove new cars while I taped my sneakers together. We began the hike. The path wound along the edge of the canyon, offering breathtaking views of the layered rock, ochre, rust, and purple stretching down into the abyss. It was magnificent, but I could not feel the awe. I felt only isolation. Marla, Ray, and Brooke walked ahead in a tight phalanx. They pointed at eagles. They took selfies with the abyss as a backdrop. They looked like a unit, a closed circle that had no opening for a 4th member. I trailed 20 feet behind, the outcast, the appendage that did not function. I remembered the one time I had challenged the narrative. I was 23. I had come home for Christmas, emboldened by a glass of wine. I had asked Ray, point blank, if Mom had left anything for me. Not just money, but anything. A necklace, a letter, an account. Ray had opened his mouth to speak, but Marla had cut in, her hand landing possessively on his shoulder. "Quinn, honey," she had said, her tone dripping with condescending pity. "Your mother was sick for a very long time. Treatment is expensive in this country. She left behind a mountain of hospital bills. That is what she left. Your father spent years paying off her debt. We did not want to burden you with that guilt. But since you asked, there it is." I had cried that night, overcome with shame for being so greedy, for thinking there was a treasure when there was only debt. I had spent the last 6 years carrying that guilt, feeling like I owed Ray and Marla for cleaning up the mess my mother's death had created. But last night, a voice from a tent had cracked that reality wide open. "I recorded what your stepmother said about that account." The words echoed in my mind, louder than the crunch of my boots on the gravel. I slowed my pace, widening the gap between me and the happy family ahead. The path narrowed here, flanked by scrub oak and juniper. I heard the rhythmic strike of trekking poles behind me. I did not turn around, but I knew who it was. Naomi. She did not rush up to me like a friend. She maintained a professional distance, acting like a solo hiker enjoying the solitude. But as the gap between us and my family grew to 30 feet, then 40, she quickened her step just enough to be within earshot. "Keep walking," Naomi said, her voice low and even. "Do not look at me. Just listen." I stared straight ahead at Ray's blue backpack bobbing in the distance. My heart began to race again. "I reviewed the audio this morning," Naomi said. She was close enough that I could hear her breathing, steady and controlled. The wind was bad last night, so I had to isolate the frequencies to be sure. And, I whispered, clutching the strap of my bag until my knuckles turned white. She mentioned a bank, Naomi said. She told your father, if she ever finds the Pioneer Crest statements, we are finished. Does that name mean anything to you? Pioneer Crest. I shook my head slightly. No, we bank with a national chain. Exactly, Naomi murmured. That is the point. It is separate. And she said something else. She said, the girl is almost 30. If we can just hold out a few more years until the statute of limitations runs out on the fraud, it won't matter what she finds. The ground beneath my boots felt solid, but my world was tilting on its axis. Fraud, statute of limitations. These were not words you used when talking about lost birthday presents or hospital bills. These were words you used when you were terrified of prison. My mother, I choked out, fighting to keep my voice steady. Marla told me my mother died in debt. She said there was nothing left. That is the oldest lie in the book, Naomi said. She sounded angry now. A cold, righteous anger. It is the easiest way to keep a victim compliant, make them feel like a burden so they never think to look for what they are owed. Ahead of us, Marla stopped. She turned around, shielding her eyes from the sun, and waved at me frantically. Quinn, keep up! We are taking a picture, she yelled, her voice echoing off the canyon walls. I stopped. I looked at her. This woman who had beaten me down with words for decades, and finally with her hands last night. I looked at Ray, who was adjusting his hat, waiting for me to fall in line. I looked at Brooke, who was smiling, oblivious to the fact that her college tuition might be paid for with stolen money. Naomi stopped a few feet behind me. She pretended to adjust her bootlaces, crouching down so she wouldn't be seen talking to me. You have a choice to make when you get back to that city, Naomi said from the ground. You can pretend none of this happened. You can go back to thinking you are the poor, unlucky stepdaughter. I watched Marla wave again, her gesture becoming impatient. Or, I whispered, or you can realize that thieves do not get to call themselves parents. Naomi said. She stood up, brushing the red dust from her knees. If your mother did leave you something, and they have been dipping into it for years to fund that lifestyle, would you really still call these people family? I stood frozen on the trail. The wind whipped my hair across my face, stinging my eyes, for the first time, looking at the three figures waiting for me in the distance. I did not see my father, my stepmother, and my sister. I saw three people standing between me and the truth. I took a step forward, not toward them, but through them. No, I whispered to myself, the word tasting like iron and ash in my mouth. I would call them targets. The fire pit was the stage, and Marla was performing the role of her life. By the time the sun dipped below the rim, painting the sky in violent shades of bruised purple and blood orange, the campground had settled into a communal rhythm. A group of hikers from Colorado had joined our circle, sharing beers and stories about the trail. Marla sat on the largest log, her knees angled toward Ray, projecting the image of a devoted wife and a patient stepmother. I sat on the periphery, nursing a lukewarm bottle of water. I could feel the eyes of the strangers on me, or at least, I thought I could. Marla was expertly guiding their perception before I could even open my mouth. Oh, Quinn is just a little exhausted, Marla said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was loud enough for everyone to hear. She patted Ray's knee. She has always been sensitive to altitude, and well, she is going through a bit of a rough patch back home, high-strung. You know how young women can be when they are trying to find themselves. The hikers nodded sympathetically. Ray stared into the flames, nodding along like a bobblehead doll, validating her lie with his silence. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. She was not just explaining my quietness. She was discrediting any potential outburst I might have. If I screamed, if I cried, if I told them she slapped me, it would just be proof of my high-strung nature. A shadow fell over my boots. Naomi. She did not ask for permission. She simply sat down on the dirt next to my folding chair. close enough that our shoulders almost touched, but angled away so it looked like she was watching the fire. She held a mug of tea in both hands, blowing the steam away. "Do not react," Naomi murmured. Her lips barely moved. "Just keep looking at the fire." "She is telling them I am crazy," I whispered back, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "She is building a defense," Naomi corrected. "She is scared. People who feel safe do not work this hard to control the narrative." Naomi took a sip of her tea. In the flickering light, her profile looked sharp, carved from the same granite as the canyon walls. "I did not tell you what I do for a living," Naomi said, her tone conversational, as if we were discussing the weather. "I used to work in Chicago for a firm called Solstice Harbor Analytics. Do you know what they do?" "No," I said. "Compliance," she said. "Financial forensics. My job was to look at spreadsheets and find the stories people were trying to hide. I spent 10 years looking for forged signatures, hidden assets, and accounts opened in violation of regulatory statutes." She turned her head slightly, her dark eyes locking onto mine for a brief second. "I know a fraud when I see one, Quinn, and I know a frantic cover-up when I hear one." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "In the recording," Naomi said, looking back at the fire. "After she hit you, and after you ran to your tent, she turned to your father. I listened to it 5 times with noise-canceling headphones to be sure. She said, 'As long as she never sees those statements, she will keep thinking she is just bad with money.'" The air left my lungs. Bad with money. It was the defining anthem of my 20s. I was the girl who could never make rent. I was the girl who had to ask for an extension on her student loans. I was the girl who drove a car with a taped-up bumper because I could not afford the deductible. I had internalized it. I believed I was irresponsible, that I lacked the discipline my father and Marla seemed to possess in abundance. "She said that?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the crackle of the wood. "Verbatim," Naomi said. "Think, Quinn, has there ever been a time when a piece of mail came for you, and it just vanished?" The memory hit me with the force of a physical blow. I was 22. I had been visiting for the weekend, sorting through the mail on the kitchen counter. I had seen a thick white envelope with a blue logo I did not recognize. Pioneer Crest Bank. The window on the envelope clearly showed my name, Quinn Mercer. I had just started to slide my finger under the flap when Marla appeared out of nowhere. She had snatched it from my hand with a laugh that sounded breathless and tight. "Oh, give me that," she had said. "The mailman is an idiot. That is for your cousin Quinn in Ohio. We get her junk mail all the time. I will return to sender." I had let it go. I did not have a cousin named Quinn in Ohio. I did not have a cousin in Ohio at all. But I was so conditioned to trust them, to assume I was wrong and they were right, that I had simply nodded and went back to eating my cereal. "There was a letter," I confessed to Naomi, my hands gripping the water bottle until the plastic crunched. "Years ago, from a bank I did not use. Marla took it. She said it was a mistake." "There are no mistakes in banking mail," Naomi said coldly. "Federal law requires beneficiary notifications to be sent to the individual named on the trust. If she intercepted that, it is a felony." "But my mom," I stammered. "Marla said she died with nothing but debt." "Did you ever see the will?" Naomi asked. "No. Ray said it was standard. Everything to the spouse." "Did you see the life insurance policy?" "No." "Did you see the final liquidation of her assets?" "No." "Then you know nothing," Naomi stated. "You only know what the people stealing from you wanted you to know." I looked across the fire. Ray was laughing at something the Colorado hiker said, but his eyes were darting nervously toward me and Naomi. He knew she was the woman from the next tent. He knew she had been close. He looked terrified. For the first time, I did not see a henpecked husband cowering before a domineering wife. I saw a partner. I saw a man who had watched his daughter struggle to buy groceries for 7 years while he likely drove a car paid for by her dead mother's legacy. He was not a victim. He was the getaway driver. "What do I do?" I asked. The despair was gone, replaced by a cold, vibrating clarity. "When you get back to the city," Naomi said, You are going to go online. You are going to go to the Pioneer Crest Bank website. You are going to try to register for online banking using your social security number and your date of birth. If an account exists, the system will tell you. If they have set up security questions you do not know, or if the email on file is Marla's, we will know exactly what we are dealing with. And then? Then we let the law do the heavy lifting, Naomi said. Marla suddenly stood up, dusting off her hands. Well, it is getting chilly. We have a big day tomorrow. Ray, Brooke, let's turn in. She shot a sharp look in my direction. Quinn, do not stay up too late. You look like a ghost. She herded them toward the tents like sheep. Naomi waited until they were zipped inside. Then, she reached into the pocket of her fleece jacket. She pulled out a small, white wireless earbud. Take this, she whispered, sliding it into my palm. I looked at it, confused. What is this? I have a high-sensitivity microphone set up outside my tent, pointing right at theirs, Naomi said. It connects to my phone, and this earbud connects to my audio share. The wind has died down. The canyon is quiet. She looked me dead in the eye. People like that often say too much when they think the canyon is the only thing listening. If they start talking about the money, or you, I want you to hear it. I want you to hear it without them filtering it through their "we love you" filter. I took the earbud. It felt warm from her pocket. 10 minutes later, I was inside my sleeping bag. The darkness was total. I inserted the white plastic into my left ear. At first, there was only the sound of static and the distant chirp of crickets. Then, I heard the rustle of fabric, a zipper, and then, Marla's voice. It was not the voice she used at the campfire. It was low, venomous, and crystal clear. Staring at me all night. I do not like that woman she was talking to. Ray's voice mumbled something inaudible. Speak up. Ray, Marla hissed. We need to make sure she does not go poking around when we get back. Maybe we should tell her we can help with her rent this month. Just a little. Keep her grateful. Keep her quiet. We cannot afford it. Ray's voice came through, sounding pathetic and whiny. Not after the transfer you made for the boat. Shut up about the boat, Marla snapped. It is an investment, just like paying for her silence is an investment. She is almost 30. Ray, once she hits 30, if she hasn't claimed the trust. The audio cut out for a second as someone shifted, then came back. She won't, Marla said, her voice dripping with confident malice. She is too weak. She thinks she deserves to be poor. We did a good job with that. I lay there in the dark, tears streaming sideways into my ears, but they were not tears of sadness. I was listening to the architects of my misery discuss my life like a business transaction. Naomi was right. I was not a daughter to them. I was a liability they were managing until the statute of limitations ran out. I touched the earbud, pressing it deeper, making sure I did not miss a single syllable. I was done being the person they created. Tonight, lying on the hard ground of the Grand Canyon, Quinn Mercer, the victim, died, and Quinn the witness was born. The key to my apartment in Riverside Bluff turned with a familiar click, but as I pushed the door open, the space inside felt foreign. It was the same studio apartment I had lived in for 3 years. The same secondhand sofa, the same drafty window overlooking the alley, the same stack of unpaid utility bills on the counter, but the person dragging her suitcase across the threshold was no longer the person who lived here. That version of Quinn had been left behind in the Arizona dust. My body ached. The bruise on my cheek had faded to a sickly yellow-green, easily hidden by foundation, but the soreness in my ribs from sleeping on the hard ground lingered. I did not unpack. I did not shower. I walked straight to my desk, a wobbly laminate table I had salvaged from a curbside, and pulled the small silver USB drive out of my pocket. Naomi had given it to me right before we parted ways at the trailhead. Backup, she had said. Cloud storage is good, but physical evidence feels better in your hand. I plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered to life, the blue glow illuminating the dark room. I clicked the file named Grand Canyon Incident, MP4. Watching it was a visceral experience. seeing Marla's face contorted in rage, seeing her hand strike me, seeing my head snap back. It made my stomach turn, but I forced myself to watch. I was not looking for the violence this time. I was looking for the confession. I turned the volume up until the speakers crackled. "You ungrateful little leech." Slap. "You should be grateful we did not tell you about that money. You would only waste it like you wasted your life." I paused the video. I replayed it. "Grateful we did not tell you about that money." She had said it. It was not a hallucination. It was an admission. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from an adrenaline rush that felt like electricity in my veins. I opened a new browser tab. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Naomi's voice was in my head. Pioneer Crest Bank. Just try it. I typed in the URL. The bank's homepage was sleek and corporate, featuring stock photos of happy families and retired couples on sailboats. The kind of life Marla projected to the world. The kind of life I was told I could never afford. I clicked on Register for online access. The form asked for my social security number. I typed it in. It asked for my date of birth. I typed it in. It asked for my zip code. I hesitated. Did I use my current zip code? Or the one from my childhood home? I tried my current one first. Error. Information does not match our records. My heart hammered against my ribs. I backspaced and typed in the zip code for the house in Red Willow Heights. The house where Ray and Marla slept. The house I had been kicked out of. I hit enter. The screen loaded. It did not give me an error. It took me to a security verification page. "We need to verify your identity. Please answer the security question on file." I held my breath. If the question was something Marla had set up, I was dead in the water. The question appeared, "What was the name of your first pet?" I froze. Tears pricked my eyes instantly. Marla would have chosen maiden name or high school, but this was my mother. My mother knew. When I was 7, we had a scruffy terrier mix named Barnaby. He died a year before Mom got sick. Marla hated dogs. She never allowed animals in the house. She would not know Barnaby. I typed in Barnaby. The circle spun. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. "Welcome, Quinn." The dashboard opened, and I gasped. The sound was sharp and loud in the empty apartment. There, at the top of the screen, in bold black letters, the Quinn Mercer Beneficiary Trust. And below it, the available balance. It was not millions, but it was not zero. It was a number that made my head spin. $84,342.16. I sat back in my chair, covering my mouth with my hand. $84,000. That was life-changing money. That was pay off my student loans money. That was move out of this dump money. But then I looked closer. Next to the balance, there was a tab for transaction history. I clicked it, and the page filled with rows of data. I scrolled all the way back to the beginning. The account was opened 20 years ago. The deposits were consistent. $500 here, $200 there. They were small, scrappy deposits. I could see my mother in those numbers. I could see her skipping lunches, wearing old clothes, saving every penny she could hide from the medical bills so that her daughter would have a safety net. The deposit stopped abruptly on November 12th, 12 years ago, the day she died. For 6 months after that, the account was dormant. Silence. Then, the withdrawals began. They were not massive chunks. They were strategic. $1,500, $2,000, $800. They occurred monthly, like a paycheck. I clicked on the details of one of the withdrawals. Authorized signatory, Raymond Mercer. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. My father, the man who sat at the dinner table and told me he wished he could help me with my tuition, but money was just so tight. The man who watched me work double shifts while he drove a leased luxury sedan. He had been paying for his comfort with the money my mother died to save for me. I printed everything. The printer on my desk whirred and spat out page after page of betrayal. I grabbed a yellow highlighter and started cross-referencing the dates with the mental timeline of my family's sudden strokes of good luck. June, 4 years ago, a withdrawal for $12,000. I checked my old social media posts. That same week, Marla had posted a photo of their newly renovated kitchen with granite countertops. Finally got the kitchen of my dreams. Ray worked so hard for this. August, 2 years ago, a withdrawal for $25,000. That was the month they threw the mortgage burning party. I had not been invited because I had to work, but I remembered seeing the pictures. They had toasted with expensive champagne while I ate ramen. May last year, a withdrawal for $18,000. I stared at the date. It was Brooke's high school graduation. The next day, she had posted a picture of herself sitting on the hood of a brand new compact SUV with a giant red bow on top. Best parents ever. I felt sick. I physically gagged. Every nice thing they owned, every moment of ease they enjoyed, was built on the theft of my future. But it was the correspondence tab that delivered the final blow. I clicked on it, expecting to see boring tax documents. Instead, I found a log of internal notes from the bank officers. One entry stood out, dated October 21st, 4 years ago. That was my 25th birthday. The note read, "Beneficiary turned 25. Per trust instructions. Full access notification letter sent to registered address." My 25th birthday. The memory hit me like a physical slap. I was sitting at the kitchen table in Red Willow Heights. I had come over for a birthday dinner that Marla insisted on hosting, mostly so she could critique my life choices. The mail had been on the counter. I remembered seeing a thick envelope. I remembered reaching for it. "Oh, give me that." Marla's voice echoed in my memory. "The mailman is an idiot. That is for your cousin Quinn in Ohio." I had believed her. God, I had been so stupid. I had believed her because the idea that my parents would intercept my mail was too monstrous to entertain. I looked back at the screen. There was another note, dated 3 days after my 25th birthday. Note from spouse executor, Raymond Mercer. "Beneficiary is currently traveling and unstable. Please redirect all physical mail to the primary executor's address. Do not send further notifications to the beneficiary to avoid confusion." Unstable. They had told the bank I was crazy. They had used the very narrative they planted in my head, that I was weak, that I was messy, that I was broken, to justify locking me out of my own inheritance. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. The puzzle was complete. There were no missing pieces anymore. They did not hate me because I was a stepchild. That would have been simple. They hated me because I was a witness to a crime they committed every single month. Every time they looked at me, they saw the person they were robbing. No wonder Marla wanted me gone. No wonder Ray could not look me in the eye. I looked around my apartment, the peeling paint, the drafty window, the empty refrigerator. For years, I had thought I deserved this struggle. I thought I was failing at adulthood while everyone else succeeded. I picked up the stack of printed statements. They were warm from the printer. I held them in my hands like a weapon. My mother did not leave me nothing. She did not leave me debt. She left me a fortress. She left me freedom. And Ray and Marla had spent the last decade bricking me out of it. I sat there in the silence of Riverside Bluff, the city lights flickering outside my window like distant stars. I was alone, but I was not lonely. For the first time in my life, I had my mother with me. She was in the numbers. She was in the security question. She was in the thousands of small deposits that screamed, "I love you" louder than Ray had ever said it in his life. "She did leave me something," I whispered to the empty room, my voice shaking with a new, terrifying power. They just decided I was not meant to know. I reached for my phone and dialed the number Naomi had given me for the lawyer. It was late, but I did not care. The time for being polite, for being quiet, for being the good little daughter who stayed in her lane, was over. I looked at the total balance one last time, $84,000 remaining. And I was going to make them pay back every single cent they had stolen, with interest. The law office of Hillside and Wynn was not located in one of the gleaming glass towers downtown, where the partners wore Italian suits and billed by the minute for breathing. It was housed in a renovated brownstone on the edge of the historical district, a building that felt solid, permanent, and unpretentious. The brass plaque by the door was polished, but the brickwork showed the wear of decades. It seemed like the kind of place you went when you needed someone to fight a war in the mud, not a debate in a boardroom. I pushed open the heavy oak door, the bell above it jingling with a sound that felt oddly old-fashioned. My hands were sweating against the leather strap of my bag. Inside that bag sat my laptop, the USB drive from Naomi, and the stack of bank statements that I had stared at until my eyes burned. Alicia Wynne was waiting for me. She was a woman who looked like she had been carved out of the same oak as her front door. She was perhaps 55, with steel-gray hair cut into a sharp, no-nonsense bob, and eyes that were intelligent and assessing. She did not offer me coffee or small talk. She simply shook my hand. Her grip was firm, dry, and professional, and gestured for me to sit in the chair opposite her desk. "Naomi told me you would be calling," Alicia said. Her voice was raspier than I expected, the voice of a woman who spent a lot of time arguing difficult cases. "She said you found something interesting in the archives of Pioneer Crest Bank." "I found a lot of things," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And I have a video." I laid it all out. For the next hour, the only sounds in the room were the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner and the occasional scratch of Alicia's fountain pen against her yellow legal pad. I showed her the statements. I showed her the withdrawal dates that matched the kitchen renovation, the new car, the mortgage payoff. I showed her the internal bank notes about the intercepted mail. Finally, I played the video. I watched Alicia's face as she watched Marla strike me. I expected her to wince, or gasp, or look at me with that pitying expression I had seen on the faces of the hikers at the Grand Canyon. But Alicia did not flinch. She watched the screen with a clinical, predatory focus. She watched Ray turn his back. She listened to the audio of Marla confessing to the financial concealment. When the video ended, Alicia sat back in her chair and took off her reading glasses. She did not look shocked. She looked like a mechanic inspecting an engine that had blown a gasket. She knew exactly what was broken, and she knew exactly how much it would cost to fix. "You are waiting for me to tell you that I cannot believe a father would do this to his child," Alicia said flatly. "I will not tell you that. I have been practicing family law and estate litigation for 30 years. Quinn, the things people do to their own blood for money would make a shark nauseous. You are not the exception. You are just the latest." It was a brutal thing to hear, but strangely comforting. It took the personal sting out of it. I was not a tragedy. I was a case file. Is it illegal?" I asked. "Or is it just morally wrong? Ray was the executor. Maybe he had the right to spend it." Alicia leaned forward, clasping her hands on top of the file. "There is a massive difference between being an executor and being a thief. Quinn, when your mother set up that trust, she created a fiduciary duty. That is a legal term. It means Ray was legally obligated to act in your best interest, not his. He was the guardian of the money, not the owner." She pulled a sheet of paper from her notes. "Using trust funds to pay off his own mortgage? That is self-dealing. Using trust funds to buy a car for another child who is not a beneficiary? That is misappropriation of assets. And intercepting bank mail to prevent you from discovering the trust exists?" Alicia raised an eyebrow. "That is fraud, and depending on how he signed those withdrawal slips, we are potentially looking at forgery." She let the words hang in the air. Fraud, forgery, misappropriation. These were heavy, iron-barred words. They were not words that belonged at a dinner table in Red Willow Heights. "So, we have 2 roads we can walk down," Alicia said, holding up 2 fingers. "Road number 1, she continued. "We approach this as a civil negotiation. We send a demand letter. We lay out the evidence, the bank statements, the timeline, the video. We tell them that if they return the remaining funds immediately and agree to a repayment plan for what they stole, plus interest, we will not escalate. This is the quiet road. It saves you from a public trial, but it relies on them having the cash or the assets to pay you back." I nodded slowly. "And road number 2? Road number 2 is the nuclear option, Alicia said, her voice dropping an octave. We file a lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty, conversion, and fraud. We seek punitive damages, which means we ask the court to punish them financially for their bad behavior, and she tapped the USB drive. We hand this video over to the district attorney. Assault is a crime. Domestic abuse is a crime. If you go down this road, you are not just suing them. You are looking at potential criminal charges for Marla, and maybe even Ray as an accessory. I sat frozen in the chair. The room felt suddenly very small. For 29 years, I had been trained to protect Ray. I had been trained to absorb Marla's abuse so that the family would not shatter. Even now, with the bruises on my soul and my skin, the idea of standing in a courtroom and pointing a finger at my father, calling him a criminal, made my stomach churn. They are my family, I whispered. It sounded weak, even to my own ears. Alicia sighed. It was not a sigh of annoyance, but of patience. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the brick wall of the adjacent building. Quinn, look at me, she said, turning back. I looked up. They had 10 years to be your family, Alicia said sternly. Every time Ray signed a check from your mother's account to pay for his new roof, he made a choice. He chose his comfort over your future. Every time Marla hid a letter, she made a choice. She chose to keep you ignorant and poor so she could feel secure. They have had 3,650 days to do the right thing. You have only known the truth for 72 hours. She walked back to the desk and placed her hands flat on the mahogany surface. Do not confuse loyalty with self-destruction, she said. You are not tearing this family apart. They tore it apart the day they decided your inheritance was their piggy bank. You are just the one turning on the lights. I closed my eyes. I thought about the ramen noodles. I thought about the taped-up shoes. I thought about Brooke's new SUV and Marla's granite countertops. And then I thought about the voice from the tent, Naomi, telling me that thieves do not get to call themselves parents. I opened my eyes. What do we do first? Alicia smiled. It was a small, sharp smile. We write a letter, but not a polite one. For the next 2 hours, we drafted, Alicia dictated, and the language she used was a revelation. It was devoid of emotion. There were no "I feel" statements. There were no accusations of being mean. It was cold, hard, mathematical fact. Pursuant to the terms of the Quinn Mercer Beneficiary Trust, we hereby demand a full and complete accounting of all transactions from inception to present date. You are immediately instructed to cease and desist any further access to said funds. Failure to comply will result in immediate legal action. It was a different language. It was the language of power. When the draft was finished, Alicia printed it out on heavy cream-colored bond paper with the Hillside and Wynn letterhead at the top. She slid it across the desk for me to review. Now, here is the most important part, Alicia said, capping her pen. From this moment forward, you do not speak to them. What? I asked, looking up from the letter. Radio silence, Alicia commanded. Ray is going to call you. He is going to cry. He is going to talk about how he changed your diapers. Marla is going to email you. She is going to threaten you. Then she is going to try to guilt you. She might even send Brooke to plead their case. She leaned in close. You do not answer. You do not text back. If they show up at your apartment, you do not open the door. You tell them to call me. The moment you engage with them emotionally, you lose. They are masters at manipulation. Quinn, you cannot beat them at their game. You have to force them to play ours. Ours? I asked. The law, Alicia said. The law does not care about tears. It cares about receipts. I looked at the letter in my hand. It was just a piece of paper, but it felt heavier than the backpack I had carried out of the canyon. It felt like a shield. Okay, I said. Radio silence. We will send this via certified mail. Return receipt requested, Alicia said. They will have to sign for it. That means we will have proof they received it. The clock starts ticking the moment that mailman hands them the envelope. I stood up to leave. My legs felt steadier than they had when I walked in. I put the draft in my bag, right next to the evidence of their betrayal. "You did good today, Quinn," Alicia said as I reached the door. "Most people take years to get to this point. You got here in a week." "I had help," I said, thinking of the woman in the next tent. "Keep that anger," Alicia advised. "You are going to need it, because when they realize the tap has been turned off, things are going to get ugly before they get better." I walked out of the office and into the afternoon sun of Riverside Bluff. The city looked different, the people walking their dogs, the cars waiting at the traffic light. Everything seemed sharper, more defined. For the first time in my life, I was not walking around wondering if I was taking up too much space. I was not wondering if I was a burden. I clutched the strap of my bag, feeling the sharp corner of the folder inside pressing against my hip. I was not a daughter begging for a seat at the table anymore. I was a creditor coming to collect a debt. And for the first time in 29 years, I was the one holding the pen. The fluorescent lights of Northbridge Signal Group hummed with a frequency that seemed to drill directly into my skull. For the next 3 days, I engaged in a surreal performance of normalcy. I sat in my cubicle. I attended Zoom meetings where we discussed data migration and quarterly projections. I nodded at colleagues who complained about the coffee machine or the weather. They had no idea that while they were worrying about spreadsheets, I was fighting a cold war with the people who raised me. Every time my phone vibrated against the desk, my heart skipped a beat. It was a Pavlovian response to terror that I could not seem to shake. Ray called first. He called 7 times in the span of 4 hours. I let every single one go to voicemail. During my lunch break, I sat in my car in the parking garage and listened to them. "Quinn, pick up the phone. This is ridiculous." "Quinn, honey, please, we need to talk. There is a big misunderstanding here. Do not do this to your mother. Do not make a scene." He sounded desperate. He sounded like a man trying to put a lid back on a blender that was already spinning. But what struck me was what he did not say. He never mentioned the money. He never mentioned the slap. He never asked if my face still hurt. He only cared about the silence. He was terrified of the silence because he did not know what was happening inside it. Then came the email from Marla. It landed in my inbox at 2 a.m. on Tuesday. The subject line was simply, "Family." I read it with a cup of stale coffee in my hand. It was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation. She started by reminding me of how she took me in when my mother died. She listed everything she had ever bought me, from school shoes to prom tickets, attaching a dollar value to her affection. Then came the pivot. "If you continue with this legal nonsense, you are making a choice," she wrote. "You are choosing to destroy this family. And if you destroy this family, do not expect Brooke to ever speak to you again. She is innocent in this. Do not make her lose a sister because you are greedy." It was a precise strike at my weakest point. I loved Brooke. I had protected Brooke. The idea of her hating me made my chest ache. I forwarded the email to Alicia immediately. Her reply came back 5 minutes later, brief and professional. "Do not engage. Paste the response we drafted. Send." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to scream at Marla. I wanted to type out every hurt feeling I had swallowed for 20 years. But I remembered Alicia's words. The law does not care about tears. I opened a reply window. I pasted the text. "All future correspondence regarding the Quinn Mercer Beneficiary Trust and recent events must be directed to my legal counsel, Alicia Wynn of Hillside and Wynn. I will not be discussing this matter personally." I hit send. It felt like firing a cannon. Naomi texted me an hour later. "Just so you know, the video is backed up on 3 different cloud servers and an external hard drive in a safety deposit box. Even if they find me, they cannot delete it. You are safe." I breathed a little easier. I was not alone in the trench anymore. On Wednesday evening, a thick envelope arrived at my apartment. It was sent via overnight courier from the headquarters of Pioneer Crest Bank. This was the result of Alicia's demand letter, the full administrative file of the trust. I cleared off my small kitchen table. I poured a glass of water. I sat down and opened the seal. The smell of old paper drifted out. The first few documents were standard. The original trust agreement, My mother's signature, strong and looping in blue ink. Seeing it made my throat tight. I traced the curves of the letters with my fingertip. She had sat in a bank office, sick and dying, and signed these papers to make sure I would be okay. There was a handwritten letter attached to the original filing. My dearest Quinn, it read, I know I might not be there to see you grow up. This money is for your freedom. Use it to build a life that makes you happy. Do not let anyone tell you that you are not enough. I love you. To the moon and back. I had to put the paper down because my hands were shaking too hard to hold it. I wiped my face. I had never seen this letter. Marla had told me there was nothing. She had looked me in the eye and told me my mother left only bills. I took a deep breath and turned the page. And there it was. The document was titled, Addendum of Authorization. It was dated 14 months after my mother died. I would have been 14 years old at the time, but the document claimed to be signed when I was 18, retroactively dated. The timeline made no sense. The text was dense legalese, but the gist was simple. It granted Raymond Mercer full, unsupervised authority to withdraw funds from the trust for household maintenance and educational expenses of the beneficiary. At the bottom of the page were 2 signature lines. The first was signed by Ray. The second was signed Quinn Mercer. I stared at it. The room seemed to tilt. The signature was a clumsy, shaky scrawl. It looked nothing like my handwriting. When I was 18, I signed my name with a distinct loop on the Q. This signature had a sharp, jagged Q. It looked like someone had tried to copy my name from a school report card, but failed to capture the flow of it. But the real shock was the witness line. Next to the date, which had clearly been written over and corrected with a different pen, was a signature I knew better than my own. Witness, Marla Mercer. I picked up my phone and dialed Alicia. It was late, but she picked up on the second ring. I have the file, I said. My voice sounded strange, cold and flat. There is an addendum. It says I gave Ray permission to manage the money. It is signed by me. Is it your signature? Alicia asked. No, I said. It is not even close. And Alicia? It is dated for a time when I was living in the dorms at college, 3 hours away. I remember that week. I had the flu. I did not leave my room for 5 days. There is no way I was at a bank branch in Red Willow Heights. Who witnessed it? Marla. The line was silent for a long moment. I could hear Alicia breathing. Okay, Alicia said finally. Her voice had lost its investigative detachment and dropped into something darker. Quinn, listen to me. If that signature is fake, we are no longer talking about a civil dispute over misused funds. We are not talking about a misunderstanding. What are we talking about? We are talking about bank fraud, Alicia said. We are talking about forgery, and because they used the mail to facilitate it, we might be looking at mail fraud. These are felonies, serious ones. If Marla signed as a witness to a signature she knew was fake, she is just as liable as Ray. I looked down at the paper. For years, I had thought they were just mean. I thought they were selfish. I thought they prioritized Brooke because she was their real family. But looking at that jagged, fake signature, I realized it was so much worse. They had erased me. They had taken my identity, my name, and used it to rob me. They had looked at a grieving teenage girl and decided she was not a person, but a resource to be harvested. The anger that had been simmering in my gut since the Grand Canyon cooled into a block of ice. I was not sad anymore. I was not conflicted. The last shred of guilt I felt about ruining the family evaporated. They stole my name, I whispered. Yes, Alicia said. They did. I want to proceed, I said. Road number 2, the nuclear option. I will start drafting the filings tonight, Alicia said. Get some sleep. Quinn, you are going to need your strength. I hung up, but I did not go to sleep. I walked over to my wallet and pulled out my driver's license. I placed it on the table next to the forged addendum. The difference was laughable. The real signature was fluid, confident. The fake one was hesitant, cramped. It was the signature of a fraud committed by arrogant people who never thought they would get caught. I took a picture. I framed it perfectly so both signatures were visible, along with Marla's witness signature at the bottom. I opened a group chat with Alicia and Naomi. I attached the photo. My thumbs flew across the screen. I did not hesitate. I did not worry about what Ray would think or what Marla would say. I am done wondering if I am overreacting. I typed, "Let us burn it down." The paper trail was becoming a noose, and with every letter Alicia sent, it tightened around my father's neck. The following week was a blur of legal aggression. Alicia did not give them room to breathe. She sent a formal demand for the original copy of the addendum. She sent a request for the identity of the notary who had supposedly stamped the document. She sent a query regarding the specific date and time the signing allegedly took place. The bank's response was immediate and terrified. They replied that they were initiating a Level 3 internal audit, which Alicia explained was banker speak for, "We are panicking because we might have let a fraud happen on our watch." Then came the text from Ray. "Meet me at the Oakwood Diner. 1 hour. Just us. Please. Quinn. For your mother's sake." It was the "for your mother's sake" that did it. It was a low blow. A cheap emotional hook that he knew I would bite. I showed the text to Alicia. She advised against it, warning me that he would try to compromise me, but I told her I needed to look him in the eye. I needed to see if the man who raised me was truly gone, or if he was just hiding behind Marla's skirt. I drove to the diner in a daze. It was a place we used to go on Sunday mornings when I was a kid, back when Mom was alive, back before the cancer and the debt and Marla. Ray was sitting in a booth in the back, nursing a black coffee. He looked smaller than I remembered. His shoulders were slumped, and the lines around his mouth were deep trenches of worry. When he saw me, he tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. "Quinn," he said, half rising from his seat. "Thank you for coming." I did not sit down immediately. I stood by the edge of the table, clutching my purse. "I am not here to negotiate. Ray, my lawyer told me not to talk to you. I am only here because you mentioned Mom." "Sit down, please," he gestured to the vinyl seat. "People are staring." I sat, but I kept my coat on. I wanted him to know I was ready to leave at any second. "This has all gotten so out of hand," Ray began, wringing his hands together on the Formica table. "Lawyers, audits, letters about fraud. Quinn, honey, we are family. We do not handle things like this. We do not steal from family either," I said. My voice was calm, which scared me more than if I had been shouting. "You took $84,000 that Mom left for me. You forged my signature." Ray flinched. "I did not forge anything. That was... Look, Marla handles the paperwork. You know that. She said she spoke to you. She said you agreed to let us manage the funds until you were older and more settled. I just signed where she told me to sign." "You are lying," I said. "Or you are willfully blind. Which is it?" Ray looked out the window, avoiding my gaze. "It was a hard time. Quinn, after the funeral. The bills were piling up. The house needed work. Marla said the money was there to help the family survive. I thought we were all in this together." "And the car for Brooke?" I asked. "The kitchen renovation? Was that survival?" "We wanted Brooke to have a good start," Ray said, his voice pleading. "We did not want her to struggle like we did." "Like I did," I corrected him in my head. Ray reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled back as if his touch burned. "Do you remember the fishing trips?" he asked, his eyes wet. "When you were 7? Just you, me, and Mom out on the lake. We used to catch those little sunfish. You were so happy then. Quinn, we were a team. I am still that dad. I am still the man who baited your hook." He was trying to drag me back into the past, to wrap me in the warm, fuzzy blanket of nostalgia so I would forget the cold, hard knife in my back. It was a tactic he had used for years. Remember the good times, ignore the bad. But the blanket did not work anymore. It was full of holes. "That dad died," I said brutally. "That dad would not have watched his wife slap his daughter in the Grand Canyon and walked away." Ray winced. I panicked. Marla has a temper. You know that. I was trying to de-escalate. You were trying to protect yourself, I said. Just like you are doing now. You are blaming Marla for the signature. You are blaming the economy for the theft. When are you going to take responsibility, Ray? I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper. I have one question, and if you lie to me, I stand up and walk out, and the next time you see me, it will be in a courtroom. Ray swallowed hard. Okay. Did you know? I asked. Did you know Mom left that account specifically for me? Did you see the letter she wrote? Ray opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at his coffee cup. He looked at the door. He looked everywhere but at me. Ray, I warned. I saw an envelope, he admitted, his voice barely a murmur. A few days after the funeral, it was in her bedside drawer. It had your name on it, for Quinn, to be opened when she is 18. The air left the booth. Naomi had been right. Alicia had been right. My gut had been right. And, I pushed. I was grieving. Ray stammered. I was a mess. Quinn, I did not want to deal with it. I put it in a box in the garage. I told myself I would give it to you when the time was right, when you were ready. And then? And then Marla found it, he whispered. She told me. She told me it was complicated. She said the money would ruin you. She said you were too young, too reckless. She said we should hold on to it, keep it safe. So you let her take it, I said. You let her hide my mother's last words to me because it was easier than fighting her. I did not know she would keep it forever, Ray protested. I thought, eventually. You stole 10 years of my life, I said. You let me work double shifts. You let me think I was worthless. You let me believe Mom left me nothing. I am sorry, Ray said, a tear sliding down his cheek. Quinn, please, we can fix this. We can pay you back, slowly. We can set up a plan. Just drop the lawsuit. If the bank investigates, if the police get involved, it will destroy us. Marla could go to jail. I could lose my license. You should have thought of that before you bought the granite countertops, I said. A bell chimed at the front of the diner. The door opened. Ray did not look up, but I did. Standing in the entryway, looking like a deer caught in headlights, was Brooke. She was wearing her college hoodie and holding car keys. She must have driven Ray here. She must have been waiting in the car and got tired of waiting. Or maybe she got suspicious. She walked toward us slowly. Ray had his back to her. He did not hear her approach. I just want my little girl back, Ray sobbed, putting his head in his hands. I just want my family to be whole again. Please, Quinn, do not ruin Brooke's life over money. She is innocent in this. She does not know anything. I know enough, a voice said from behind him. Ray jumped so hard, he nearly knocked over his coffee. He spun around. Brooke was standing there, her face pale, her eyes wide with horror. She looked from Ray to me, and then back to Ray. You told me the tuition money came from a bonus, Brooke said. Her voice was trembling. You told me the car was a gift from Grandma's estate. Brooke, honey, Ray stood up, his hands shaking. Go wait in the car. This is adult business. I heard you, Brooke said. She took a step back, away from him. You said Mom left a letter for Quinn. You said you hid it. It is complicated, Ray pleaded. It is not complicated, Brooke yelled. Her voice cracked, drawing the attention of the entire diner. You stole it? Is that what you're saying? All the stuff? My clothes? My school? You stole it from Quinn? She looked at me, for years. Brooke had looked at me with a vague, pitying affection. I was the older sister who couldn't get her act together. I was the cautionary tale. Now she looked at me with a devastation that broke my heart. She realized that her pedestal was built on my back. Quinn, Brooke whispered, is it true? Yes, I said softly. Brooke looked down at her car keys. The keys to the SUV paid for by the Quinn Mercer Beneficiary Trust. She looked like she wanted to throw up. I didn't know, she choked out. I swear to God, Quinn, I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said. Ray tried to grab Brooke's arm. Brooke, listen to me, We did it for you. Everything we did so you could have a good life." Brooke yanked her arm away. "Do not put this on me. You made me a thief. I have been driving a stolen car for a year." She backed away, tears streaming down her face. "I cannot be here. I cannot look at you right now." She turned and ran out of the diner. The bell chimed again, a cheerful sound that contrasted sharply with the ruin she left behind. Ray slumped back into the booth. He looked defeated. He looked old. "You won," he whispered to me, his voice bitter. "Are you happy now? You turned her against me." I stood up. I buttoned my coat. "I did not turn her against you. Ray," I said, "you did that yourself. You think this is about the cash? You think I am doing this because I want to buy a boat or a new kitchen?" I leaned down, getting right in his face. "The money was never the problem. The lies were, you lied about who I was. You lied about who my mother was. And you lied to Brooke about who you were." "We can still fix this," Ray begged, grasping at straws. "A payment plan. Just us. Please." My phone buzzed in my pocket, a sharp, insistent vibration. I pulled it out. It was a text from Alicia. "Do not panic, but I just got off the phone with the bank's legal counsel. The internal review found irregularities that go back further than we thought. And Quinn? They found a second account." I stared at the screen. A second account? "We need to meet." The text continued. "This just got bigger. The FBI might be involved because of the wire transfers across state lines." I looked at Ray. He was wiping his eyes with a napkin, still thinking this was a family squabble that could be smoothed over with an apology and a check. He had no idea that the avalanche had already started. "It is too late for a payment plan." "Ray," I said, putting my phone away. "Why?" he asked. "We can work it out." "Because it is not up to me anymore," I said, "and it is not just about the trust anymore." I walked away from the booth without looking back. I heard him call my name, but I kept walking. I stepped out into the parking lot, where Brooke's car was gone. The sky was gray and heavy, threatening rain. I took a deep breath of the cool air. The storm was coming, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one who was going to get wet. The conference room on the 42nd floor of the Pioneer Crest Bank headquarters was designed to make people feel small. The table was a slab of polished black granite that seemed to stretch for miles, and the floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, reducing the cars and people below to insignificant specks. I sat on one side of the table, flanked by Alicia. On the other side sat three people in expensive suits who looked like they were chewing on glass. There was Mr. Henderson, the regional vice president, Ms. Vance, the head of internal compliance, and a man who had not introduced himself but whose sharp, predatory eyes told me he was their lead counsel. The air conditioning was humming, a low, aggressive drone that did nothing to cool the sweat I could see beading on Mr. Henderson's forehead. "We have reviewed the materials provided by your counsel," Ms. Vance began. She had a folder in front of her, the edges aligned perfectly with the edge of the table. She did not open it. She did not need to. "And we have conducted a preliminary forensic analysis of the signature on the addendum of authorization dated 8 years ago." She paused, looking at me for the first time. Her expression was not apologetic. It was terrified. "Our handwriting experts have concluded that there are significant inconsistencies between the signature on the addendum and the signature card you provided from your current driver's license, as well as the original signature on file from when the trust was established," she said. "Inconsistencies is a polite word for it," Alicia said. Her voice was calm, but it carried across the granite table like a whip crack. "It is a forgery, a bad one." The lead counsel leaned forward. "Ms. Wynne, let us not throw around criminal accusations before we have the full picture. However, Pioneer Crest takes these matters very seriously. We are prepared to cooperate fully to resolve this misunderstanding." "It is not a misunderstanding when $84,000 goes missing," I said. My voice surprised me. It was steady. It was the voice of the woman Naomi had told me to be. "We agree that the optics are troubling," Mr. Henderson said quickly, "which is why we dug deeper. You claimed you were not present at the branch on the day the addendum was signed. We pulled the security archives." He tapped a tablet in front of him, and a large monitor on the wall flickered to life. The footage was grainy, stamped with a date from 8 years ago. It showed the interior of the Red Willow Heights branch. I watched, mesmerized, as the glass doors opened. Ray walked in first. He was wearing his favorite brown corduroy jacket, looking nervous, checking his watch. Behind him was Marla. She was wearing sunglasses indoors and carrying a large tote bag. They walked straight to the desk of a loan officer. They sat down. They talked. Papers were slid across the desk. Marla pointed at something. Ray signed. Then Marla signed. The loan officer stamped the papers. I watched for another minute. I watched the door. I waited for a younger version of myself to walk in. I never did. "That is the entire transaction," Ms. Vance said quietly. "You were not there, Ms. Mercer." The silence in the room was heavy. It pressed against my eardrums. "If the addendum required the beneficiary's signature in the presence of a notary," Alicia said, pointing a finger at the screen, "and the beneficiary was not in the building, then your loan officer witnessed a forgery. That makes your employee an accessory to fraud, and it makes this bank liable for every cent that was withdrawn based on that document." The bank's lawyer winced. This was their nightmare. It was not just about a family stealing from each other anymore. It was about a bank allowing it to happen through negligence or corruption. "We are currently trying to locate the employee in question," Mr. Henderson said, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. "He is no longer with the company, but that is beside the point. We want to make this right." "How?" I asked. "We are prepared to reverse the unauthorized transactions," the lawyer said. "We will restore the principal balance of the trust." "And the interest?" Alicia asked sharply. "The market has grown significantly in 8 years. You owe her the growth she lost, not just the cash that was taken." "We can discuss an equitable calculation," the lawyer conceded. "I am not done," Alicia said. She turned to the door. "I would like to introduce an independent witness who can speak to the intent behind these transactions. This speaks to the damages my client has suffered." The door opened, and Naomi walked in. She looked out of place in her hiking boots and flannel shirt among the tailored suits, but she walked with the confidence of someone who owned the building. She did not look at the bank executives. She looked at me and gave a small, grim nod. She placed her phone on the table and connected it to the AV system with a cable she had brought herself. "My name is Naomi Vance," she said. "No relation to the compliance officer here. I was camping next to the Mercer family at the Grand Canyon last week. I recorded an interaction between the authorized user, Raymond Mercer, and the witness to the addendum, Marla Mercer." She pressed play. The pristine boardroom was suddenly filled with the sound of the wind howling through the canyon. The contrast was jarring. Then came the sound of the slap. It was loud, wet, and violent. "Mr. Henderson flinched visibly. The lawyer stopped taking notes. Then came Marla's voice, distorted by rage but undeniable. "You ungrateful little leech." And then, the smoking gun. "If she ever finds out about that account, we are done. So keep your mouth shut." The video ended. Naomi unplugged the phone and crossed her arms. "That," Naomi said, looking directly at the bank's lawyer, "is an admission of guilt. She knew the account was hidden. She knew that if Quinn found out, they were done. That implies knowledge of illegality." Ms. Vance, the compliance officer, looked like she was going to be sick. She closed her folder. "This changes the complexion of the situation," she said stiffly. "This is not just a dispute over authorized use. This establishes malicious intent to conceal assets." Alicia leaned back, crossing her legs. "Here is what is going to happen. You are going to restore the full value of the trust, including calculated market growth. You are going to immediately revoke all access for Raymond and Marla Mercer. You are going to transfer sole control to Quinn, and you are going to launch a formal investigation into the employee who notarized that fake signature." "We can agree to the financial restitution," the lawyer said quickly. However, we would like to handle the investigation internally. We can draft a settlement agreement that includes a non-disclosure clause regarding the bank's involvement." "No," I said. The lawyer looked at me, surprised. He was used to Alicia doing the talking. "No non-disclosure," I said. "And no settlement that says this was a mistake. They forged my name. Your bank let them. If I sign a paper saying this was a misunderstanding so you can save face, I am helping them get away with it again." "Ms. Mercer," the lawyer said, his voice taking on a patronizing tone, "if we do not settle this privately, we are required by federal law to file a suspicious activity report. Given the amount of money and the interstate nature of the wire transfers, this will trigger an investigation by the FBI and the IRS. Your father and stepmother could be facing federal charges, money laundering, wire fraud, identity theft." He thought he was threatening me. He thought the prospect of sending my father to prison would make me back down. He thought I was still the girl who cried when her stepmother yelled at her. I looked at the screen, where the frozen image of Ray and Marla sitting at the bank desk remained. They looked so comfortable. They looked so entitled. They were signing away my future, and they did not even look nervous. "I know," I said. Alicia explained the mandatory reporting laws to me. "So you understand that if we go down this road, there is no turning back?" Mr. Henderson asked. "This becomes a criminal matter. People go to prison for this, Ms. Mercer." I thought about the Grand Canyon. I thought about the bruise that was just now fading from my cheek. I thought about Brooke running out of the diner. Her innocence shattered not by me, but by the lies they told her. "They had 10 years to tell me the truth," I said. "They had 10 years to stop spending my money. They didn't stop because they thought they loved me. They didn't stop because it was the right thing to do. They stopped because I caught them." I stood up. "File the report," I said. "Do whatever the law requires you to do. I am not protecting them anymore." Alicia stood up with me. Gathering her papers, she looked proud. "You have our terms," Alicia said to the stunned executives. "We expect the restitution funds in Quinn's account by close of business Friday, or we file the civil suit on Monday morning and attach this video to the public record." We walked out of the conference room. The silence behind us was absolute. I walked down the long, glass-walled corridor that led to the elevators. Below me, the city continued to move, oblivious to the fact that I had just pressed the button that would destroy my family. I stopped halfway down the hall and looked out at the parking lot far below. The cars looked like toys. Somewhere down there, real people were living real lives. "Are you okay?" Naomi asked, coming up beside me. "I just sent my father to prison," I whispered. "No," Alicia said, stepping up on my other side. "You just stopped standing in the way of the consequences he earned." I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. It was not happiness. It was the absence of the heavy, suffocating weight I had carried since I was 12 years old. The weight of trying to be good enough for people who only saw me as a paycheck. "It is done," I said to the glass. "Not quite," Alicia said gently. "Now we have to tell them, and that is going to be the hardest part." I turned away from the window. I checked my phone. There were 3 missed calls from Ray and a text from Marla, asking if I wanted to come over for dinner to talk things out. I did not reply. The time for talking was over. The time for the law had begun. I walked toward the elevator, ready to ride it down to the ground floor, where I would step out not as a victim, but as a woman who had finally reclaimed her own life. The driveway of the house in Red Willow Heights had not changed. The basketball hoop Ray had put up for Brooke still leaned slightly to the left. The hydrangeas Marla prided herself on were just starting to bloom, oblivious to the rot inside the home they decorated. I parked my car at the curb, but I did not get out alone. Marla had texted me that morning, "Come over, just family. We will sign whatever you want. Just do not let this destroy us." She wanted Quinn the daughter. She wanted the girl who could be guilt-tripped into silence over a cup of tea in the kitchen. Instead, she got Quinn the plaintiff. I stepped out of the car. From the passenger side emerged Alicia, carrying her leather briefcase like a weapon. From the back seat stepped Naomi. holding her phone in a stabilizer grip, the red recording light already blinking steady and unblinking. We walked up the path in formation. I rang the bell, a cheerful two-tone chime that I used to associate with coming home from school. Ray opened the door. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the last week. His eyes were red-rimmed, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. When he saw Alicia and Naomi standing behind me, his face crumpled. "Quinn," he whispered, his voice cracking. "We said just us." "This is us now." "Ray," I said, stepping past him into the foyer. "My lawyer and my witness." Marla was waiting in the living room. She had set the stage perfectly. There was a pot of tea on the coffee table. She was wearing a soft, beige cardigan, looking small and harmless. Brooke was sitting in the corner armchair, her knees pulled up to her chest, looking like she wanted to disappear into the upholstery. When Marla saw the three of us enter, her worried mother mask slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing a flash of pure, venomous annoyance before she smoothed it back into place. "I see you brought an audience," Marla said, her voice tight. "I thought we were going to resolve this like adults, like a family." "We are resolving it like adults," Alicia said, taking a seat on the sofa without being invited. She placed her briefcase on the table, right next to the tea set. "We are here to collect the signed confession and the repayment schedule. Nothing else." "We are not criminals," Marla said, her voice trembling with a practiced vibrato. "We were parents. We were trying to survive." She looked at me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Quinn, honey, you have to understand. When your mother died, Ray was broken. The bills were overwhelming. We did not use that money for trips to Hawaii. We used it to keep the lights on. We used it to make sure Brooke could go to a good school. We were trying to hold this house together for both of you." "You bought a boat," I said flatly. "You renovated the kitchen. You bought Brooke a car. Do not talk to me about keeping the lights on." "It was an investment in the family," Marla insisted, leaning forward. "We were going to pay it back. We always intended to pay it back. We just wanted to wait until you were mature enough to handle it. You were always so flighty, so impulsive." "I was working 2 jobs," I reminded her. "I was eating instant oatmeal for dinner while you were buying granite countertops." Marla stood up, pacing the rug. "You are twisting everything. You are making us out to be monsters. But I have proof that this was not a theft. It was an agreement." The room went silent. Ray looked up, confused. "Marla, what are you talking about?" Marla walked over to the antique secretary desk in the corner. She opened a drawer and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It looked old, slightly yellowed at the edges. She walked back and slapped it down on the coffee table in front of Alicia. "There," Marla said triumphantly. "She knew. She agreed to it years ago. She just conveniently forgot because she wants to play the victim now." I looked down at the paper. It was a handwritten note, scrawled on lined notebook paper. "I, Quinn Mercer, hereby voluntarily waive my right to the trust fund left by my mother. I give full permission to my father, Raymond Mercer, to use these funds for the benefit of the household. As I have chosen to leave home and live independently, I do not want this money." At the bottom was a date from 10 years ago and a signature, Quinn Mercer. For a second, the world spun. The gaslighting was so intense, so absolute, that I actually questioned my own memory. Did I sign this? I had been 19. I had been angry. I had left home in a hurry. Had I written this in a moment of teenage rebellion, just to sever ties? Ray was staring at the paper, his mouth open. "Marla, I never saw this." "You were depressed, Ray," Marla said quickly. "She gave it to me before she got on the bus. She threw it at me. She said she didn't want a dime from us." She looked at me, her eyes hard and challenging. "Go ahead. Deny it. It is your handwriting." It did look like my handwriting, or at least, a very good imitation of it. The loop on the Q was right this time. Brooke stood up. She walked over to the table and looked at the paper. She looked at me, then at her mother. "Quinn?" Brooke asked, her voice shaking. "Did you write this?" I stared at the paper. The doubt was clawing at my throat. Then Naomi spoke. "May I?" she asked. Without waiting for an answer, Naomi reached out and picked up the paper. She held it up to the light. She looked at the date at the bottom. September 12th, 10 years ago. Naomi read. She looked at me. "Quinn, where were you on September 12th, 10 years ago?" I racked my brain. September, 10 years ago. I was 19. I was a sophomore in college. "I was at school," I said. "In Chicago." "Exactly," Naomi said. Her voice was calm, surgical. "I remember you telling me about your sophomore year. You were working at the campus library. You didn't come home until Thanksgiving." Naomi turned to Marla. "This document is dated September 12th. Quinn was 300 miles away, unless she drove 6 hours home, signed this piece of paper, and drove 6 hours back without missing her shift at the library the next morning. This is physically impossible." Marla's face turned a patchy red. "She mailed it! She mailed it to me!" "There is no crease," Alicia pointed out, tapping the paper. "If this was in an envelope, it would be folded. This paper is flat. It has never been mailed." Alicia picked up the document, her eyes scanning the text with a lawyer's disdain. "And let us look at the language," Alicia said. "For the benefit of the household. Live independently. This does not sound like a 19-year-old girl who just stormed out of the house. This sounds like a contract written by someone who is trying to cover their tracks legally. It sounds like you, Marla." "That is ridiculous," Marla spat. "You are just twisting things." "And here is the final nail," Alicia said, dropping the paper back onto the table as if it were contaminated. "If this document was real, why wasn't it in the bank's file? You submitted the fake addendum. Why didn't you submit this waiver? It would have given you total clearance." Marla froze. "I will tell you why." Alicia answered her own question. "Because you just wrote this. You wrote it last night. Or maybe this morning, in a panic. You tried to forge her signature again, hoping to bully her into dropping the lawsuit. But you made a mistake. You forgot that paper trails don't just exist in your filing cabinet. They exist in reality." Brooke made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. She looked at her mother with a horror that was absolute. "Mom," Brooke whispered, "you forged it? Just now? You tried to frame her?" "I am protecting you," Marla shrieked, spinning on her daughter. "Do not look at me like that. I did everything for you. You think your father could have provided the life you have? You think he could have bought you that car? He is weak. He would have let us rot in this house with nothing." "Marla, stop," Ray said, standing up. He looked sick. "Stop lying." "I am the only one who isn't lying," Marla yelled, backing away toward the fireplace. Her composure was gone. The carefully constructed mask of the suburban matriarch had shattered, revealing the desperate, clawing greed underneath. "I managed this family. I made the hard choices. And now you all want to judge me?" She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You were never going to appreciate it anyway. You are just like your mother. Soft, weak. You would have wasted that money on art, or travel, or some nonsense. We used it to build something real." "You used it to build a lie," I said, stepping forward. "And you used my name to do it." "I had to," Marla screamed. The words tore out of her throat, raw and ugly. "Everything we did was to keep control before she turned 25. Your mother never understood money the way I do." The room went dead silent. The echo of her words hung in the air. Before she turned 25, it was the specific detail that locked the handcuffs. My mother's letter, the one Ray had admitted to hiding, the one the banknotes referenced, had stipulated that I was to be notified and given full access when I turned 25. Marla just admitted she knew that timeline. She admitted there was a strategy to deplete the funds or secure control before that deadline hit. Alicia reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She held it up. "This conversation is now part of our record," Alicia announced, her voice ringing with the finality of a gavel strike. Naomi stepped forward, her camera still trained unflinchingly on Marla's face. "You just admitted motive. timeline, and intent, Naomi said. On camera, again, you admitted you knew about the age 25 stipulation. That proves you saw the original trust documents and the letter. It proves premeditation. Marla looked around the room. She looked at Ray, who had his face in his hands. She looked at Brooke, who was backing away from her as if she were a stranger. She looked at the fake document on the table, the evidence of her own undoing. Her chest heaved. She realized, too late, that she had not walked into a negotiation. She had walked into a trap, and she had just snapped the jaws shut on her own leg. "Get out," Marla whispered. "We are leaving," Alicia said, snapping her briefcase shut. She picked up the fake waiver with a tissue, careful not to smudge the fingerprints, and slipped it inside. "And we are taking this evidence with us. Do not try to leave town, Marla. The sheriff will be looking for you." I looked at my father one last time. He did not look up. He was broken. Yes, but he had let this happen. He had watched her forge my name, or at least looked the other way while she did it, for 10 years. "I am sorry, Brooke," I said softly to my sister. Brooke shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Don't be," she choked out. "Just go, before I throw up." We walked out of the house. The door closed behind us, but it did not slam. It clicked shut with a soft, final sound. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn that had been paid for with my mother's legacy. "Did we get it?" I asked, my voice trembling as the adrenaline began to crash. "We got everything," Naomi said, stopping to save the video file. She confessed to the timeline that connects her to the mail fraud and the intercepting of the bank documents. She is done. Alicia nodded, looking at the house. "That was not a civil defense. That was a confession. I will call the district attorney in the morning." I got into my car, but my hands were shaking too hard to put the key in the ignition. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I thought I would feel triumphant. Instead, I felt a deep, hollowing exhaustion. But underneath the exhaustion, there was something else, a clean, solid ground. I was not the crazy one. I was not the ungrateful one. I was Quinn Mercer. And for the first time in my life, the story was mine. The conference room was airless and smelled of lemon polish and anxiety. It was a neutral ground, a mediation center downtown, far away from the emotional minefield of the house in Red Willow Heights and the corporate fortress of the bank. This time, there were no coffee cups, no casual pleasantries, and absolutely no room for stories about how hard it was to raise a family. There was only the record. A court reporter sat at the head of the table, her fingers hovering over a stenography machine, ready to capture every syllable. On one side sat the bank's legal team, looking grim and eager to cut a check. On the other side sat Ray and Marla, flanked by a court-appointed defense attorney who looked like he had not slept in 3 days. I sat in the middle, with Alicia on my right and Naomi on my left. The silence was heavy, broken only by the shuffling of papers. It was the sound of a 20-year lie being dismantled, sheet by sheet. The representative from Pioneer Crest Bank spoke first. He did not look at Ray or Marla. He looked strictly at the documents in front of him. To avoid prolonged litigation and in recognition of the administrative errors regarding the verification of signatures, the representative said, his voice monotone, the bank agrees to immediate restitution of the principal balance of $84,342. Furthermore, we have calculated the lost market growth over the 10-year period of unauthorized access. He slid a check across the table toward Alicia. This check includes the principal plus an additional $42,000 in interest and a $20,000 settlement for mishandling of beneficiary data. The total is $146,000, payable immediately to Quinn Mercer. I looked at the check. It was just a piece of paper, but it represented my mother's voice finally breaking through the noise. It was my freedom. And the representative added, "We have issued a formal letter acknowledging that Quinn Mercer was, and remains, the sole intended beneficiary of the trust. The addendum has been declared void and fraudulent." Alicia took the check and the letter. She did not smile. She simply nodded and placed them in her file. Then, she turned her attention to the other side of the table. Ray looked like a ghost. He was wearing a suit that seemed 2 sizes too big for him now. He was staring at his hands, which were folded on the table in a posture of prayer. Marla sat rigid. Her jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping in her cheek. She was not looking at me. She was staring at the wall, refusing to acknowledge the reality of the room. Their lawyer cleared his throat. He was a pragmatic man who had clearly looked at the video, the handwriting analysis, and the fake waiver Marla had tried to pass off, and realized his clients were standing on a trap door. "My clients are prepared to sign the settlement agreement," the lawyer said quietly. "They agree to waive any future claims to the estate. They agree to the non-disparagement clause. In exchange, Ms. Mercer agrees to withdraw the civil complaint and decline to press further charges regarding the signature irregularities." It was a plea deal in all but name. They were trading their pride for their freedom. Alicia slid the heavy document across the table. It was thick, bound in blue paper. "Sign here," Alicia said, pointing to the tab on the last page. "And here, and initial the bottom of every page." Ray picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so badly that the pen rattled against the paper. He signed his name. Then he initialed. It took him a long time. Every stroke of the pen seemed to take a year off his life. When he finished, he pushed the document away and looked up. His eyes found mine. They were wet and red. "Quinn," he whispered. The stenographer's machine clicked softly. "I am sorry. I did not know how to stop her. I just wanted peace." I looked at this man, my father. I remembered him teaching me to ride a bike. I remembered him sitting in the hospital waiting room when Mom was sick. I remembered him turning his back in the Grand Canyon. "Peace is not what you wanted, Dad," I said. My voice was not angry. It was just tired. "You wanted ease. You wanted a wife who handled things so you did not have to. You watched me struggle for 10 years. You watched me wear old clothes and work double shifts. And you went home to your granite countertops and slept soundly." "I loved you," he choked out. "Dad," I said, shaking my head slowly, "you had so many chances to choose me before you walked into this room. You chose comfort every time." Ray flinched as if I had slapped him. He lowered his head, defeated. Alicia pushed the papers toward Marla. "Mrs. Mercer," Alicia said. Marla did not move. She stared at the document. "I am not signing that," Marla said. Her voice was brittle, like dry leaves. "It says I admit to. It says I knowingly." She could not even say the words. "It says you acknowledge that you were not authorized to access the funds," Alicia said. "It is a standard admission of liability." "I did it for this family," Marla hissed, her eyes snapping toward me. "I am not a criminal. I am a mother." "You are a woman who forged a signature and was caught on video admitting to a timeline of fraud," Alicia said coldly. "If you do not sign this settlement, we walk out of here. I file the civil suit tomorrow. And the bank files their suspicious activity report with the FBI this afternoon. Do you want to explain your motherly instincts to a federal agent?" Marla froze. She looked at her lawyer. "Sign it, Marla," her lawyer murmured, not making eye contact. "It is the best deal you are going to get." Marla looked at the pen. She looked at me. For a second, I thought she was going to lunge across the table. The hatred in her eyes was a physical thing. She hated me not because I had done anything wrong, but because I was the mirror she could not stand to look into. She picked up the pen. She bit her lips so hard a drop of blood bloomed on the skin. She signed. It was a violent scrawl, slashing across the paper. "There," she spat, throwing the pen down. "Take your blood money. I hope it rots in your pocket." "It is not blood money, Marla," Naomi spoke up for the first time, her voice calm and terrifying. "It is just the money you didn't earn." In the corner of the room, on a small chair against the wall, Brooke let out a sound. It was a small, strangled sob. She had been sitting there the whole time, silent, watching her parents shrink into criminals. The meeting ended, the papers were notarized, the check was secured. I walked out into the parking lot. The sun was blindingly bright. The air smelled of asphalt and exhaust, but to me, it smelled like oxygen. "Quinn!" I turned. Brooke was running after me. Her face was blotchy from crying, her hair messy. She stopped a few feet away, breathing hard. "Brooke," I said, "you did not have to come out here." "I had to," she said. She wiped her nose with her sleeve. She looked at her parents' car, where Ray and Marla were arguing furiously inside, their muffled voices angry and distant. "I am selling the car," Brooke said. "The SUV? I looked up the value. It is worth about $18,000, and I have some savings from my summer job. I can pay you back for the tuition. It will take me a while, but I will sign a note. I will pay you back every cent they spent on me." She looked at me with desperate, pleading eyes. "If I give up what Mom spent from your account, will you ever be able to forgive me? Not her, me." I looked at my little sister. She was 18 years old. She was just starting her life, and she was already trying to carry the debt of her parents' sins. She thought the money was the wall between us. She thought that if she balanced the ledger, she could buy back my love. I stepped forward and pulled her into a hug. She stiffened for a second, then collapsed against me, sobbing into my shoulder. "Brooke, listen to me," I said, pulling back and holding her by the shoulders. "You do not owe me a car. You do not owe me tuition." "But it was your money," she cried. "It was," I agreed. "And now I have it back. The bank paid me. I am whole." I looked toward the car where Marla was still screaming at Ray. "You do not owe me money," I told her firmly. "You owe yourself the truth about who she really is. That is the debt you have to pay. You have to decide if you are going to be the person she wants you to be, or the person you actually are." Brooke looked at the car, then back at me. She nodded slowly. "I am not going home with them," she whispered. "I am going to call a friend." "Good," I said. "Call me when you are ready." I turned and walked to my own car. Naomi and Alicia were waiting. "Where to?" Naomi asked as I got in. "The airport," I said. "I have one more stop to make." 3 days later, I stood on the rim of the Grand Canyon. It was not the same campsite where I had been slapped. It was miles away, on the North Rim, a place that was quieter, wilder, and empty of tourists. The wind whipped my hair across my face, but this time I did not feel cold. I held my mother's letter in my hand, the copy the bank had finally released to me. I had read it a dozen times on the plane, but I wanted to read the end here, in the place where I had almost lost myself. "I know the world can be hard." Her handwriting read, "But you are made of iron. My love, even if you do not feel it yet, I trust you to walk away from anyone who makes you feel small, even if it is family, especially if it is family." She had known, somehow, she had known that I would need permission to leave. I took a deep breath. The canyon stretched out before me, vast and indifferent and beautiful. It did not care about bank accounts or lies or family drama. It just existed, and now, so did I. I pulled out my phone. I opened my text thread with Naomi. "It is done," I typed. "Thank you for being the voice from the tent." I watched the 3 dots dance on the screen. Her reply came through a moment later. "No, you were the one who finally listened." I put the phone away. I turned my back on the canyon. In my mind, I saw the shadow of the old family dinner table, the place where I had begged for scraps, where I had swallowed insults, where I had waited for permission to speak. I walked away from it. I walked toward the rental car, toward the road, toward a life that was terrifyingly, wonderfully empty of obligation. I was not a daughter. I was not a victim. I was not a plaintiff. I was just Quinn, and for the first time, that was enough. Thank you so much for listening to Quinn's story. If this story made you feel that spark of justice, please comment below and tell me where you are listening from. I love seeing our community grow across the world. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Hit that like button. And smash the hype button to help this video reach more people who need to be reminded that they are strong enough to walk away.